We have a quorum. We got somebody, two people in the back. Anna's here. Jill, if you will let us know who our guests are.
It is so nice to have you here today, and I have special appreciation. Is this on?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
To Dr. Nola Jones, Dr. Jay Steele, Anna Shepard, and Sharon Gentry. Because in 2 years, this is the first time, to my knowledge, that we have had performers. So it's so nice to have you here today. Ted Edinger is the visual arts teacher at Tulip Grove, and the students' artwork is on display out in the hall as you enter. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, please go by and see. It's gorgeous. And Jason Walsh. Jason, thank you for being here, is the world percussion teacher at Overton. And the students who performed tonight before the board meeting are so welcome. Thank you so much. We have been enjoying your practice for the last 15 or 20 minutes.
Best committee meeting ever.
It's a pleasure to welcome you here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Dylan Kentish to lead us in the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much. Okay, we'll go. We'll go get announcements, and we'll let Jill continue.
This week, it was actually last week, it was a privilege to go on a tour of Lytton Middle with Tracy Bruno and staff. The students were so engaged as they were involved in project-based learning. Not one student throughout that school, I didn't see one student off task. The curriculum was built around the interests of the students, and they were highly motivated. The highlight for me was watching the students launch their student-made rockets. And they had a clipboard where they were calculating percentages and speed, and then they were going back to assess what needed to be done to make the rockets perform even better. So it was a great tour. Congratulations to Dr. Ron Woodard and the Maplewood staff for the highest percentage of gains in all the district schools, all the district high schools. And all the students, the students scored proficient in all tested areas, either proficient or advanced. Congratulations are also in order for Stratford High School's principal Mike Steele and Jeff Davis, the assistant principal. They had a 3 in numeracy and a 4 in literacy on their TVOS scores. Their graduation rate last year rose 13.9%, and their scholarships rose from $386,000 to $5 million this past year. There's truly a renaissance going on in East Nashville. I attended the TEA MNEA meeting last night for East Nashville parents to voice their concerns and suggestions for East Nashville, and we had quite a few parents there, but because of the conflict with first school choice, what is that called? First Choice Festival. We didn't have as many as we would have had. So there is another meeting scheduled for next Thursday in October at 5:30 again. Last but not least, Teaching and Learning Committee meeting is scheduled for October the 28th in the conference room prior to the board meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
At 4 o'clock or 4?
I thought we'd wait until a little bit closer to see what else is on the agenda, be 3:30 or 4. Thank you.
Anna, we're just going to go this way and we'll double back.
Okay. Just to expand on my colleagues' comments, we'll be hearing a report from under Chairwoman Gentry's newest addition to the agenda, and the good news is from Dr. Nola Jones, who's the coordinator of visual and performing arts for Metro Nashville Public Schools. I represent the Board of Education on the Music Makes Us committee board, and I just wanted to let everyone know what this great organization in 3 years' time has done. And it came actually from a comment that my colleague Ms. Frog made about she being in a band class and she couldn't believe that all the band students had an instrument. And I thought, oh, well, we're not doing a very good job of getting that information out there. So Dr. Jones will be telling us that. Last Tuesday, McGavock High School had their promise to graduate ceremony, and I had the pleasure of shaking hands with the 650 plus freshmen at McGavock High School. And that was quite a treat because I knew several of the students and it made it kind of personal for me. Donaldson Middle Prep had their kickoff for the Watchdogs program, and the cafeteria was filled with dads, uncles, granddads, and kids, and it was a great response to this program. And I have to give kudos to the McGavock Family Involvement Specialist, Kevin McKenzie, because we have a lot of things going on in the McGavock cluster. I don't even touch on them usually when I make my announcements, but Kevin is involved with all of those initiatives and all of those endeavors, and he does a really good job, so I really want to thank him for his involvement. And last but not least, I want to give a huge thank you to Liz Allen Bay, who conducted our school board retreat that we had a couple Saturdays ago. It was, we learned a lot, and not least of which is how much I have in common with my colleague, Mr. Pinkston.
Yes.
Who knew? Who knew? And I agreed with him twice publicly during the day, which I was scaring myself. But it was a really good retreat, and thank you to Dr. Gentry and to Lisa Kim, and like I said, to Liz Allen Fay. It was a really good retreat. That concludes my announcements.
Okay. Lisa, go on.
I just am glad we got posterity. I have nothing
Just
else.
for you.
Thank you.
Just for you.
Mary, Ms. Pierce, excuse me, Ms. Brogue.
So I have one announcement. New principal at Bellevue Middle School would like to welcome him, Mr. Jim Mann. He comes to us from a Blue Ribbon Williamson County school, and we will be having, he will be holding a sort of a meet and greet at the school, a community meeting on October 20th at 6 p.m. and I will be in attendance. So I invite everyone to attend and bring your questions and concerns. Thank you.
And next we have, and the good news is Ms. Jones here? Dr. Jones, I apologize, thank you. And so just to kind of expand on, with all the comments that I've been hearing over the few years and over the last several years, we just want to take an opportunity to highlight the good news and some of the great things that are going on here in MNPS. And I was once told if you don't sing your own song, then, hey. So Dr. Jones is going to talk to us, and while she's getting set up, I just want to point out, as part of my announcement, that this is actually National Keep Kids Creative Week, so I think this is very apropos.
Absolutely.
Dr. Jones?
Well, thank you, board members, for inviting me to be here tonight to spread the good news of Music Makes Us. My name is Nola Jones, and I do have the great fortunate pleasure to be the coordinator of visual and performing arts for Metro Schools. One thing I need to point out to you about the ensemble that you just heard, only 3 of those children are band members at Overton High School. These are students that have gotten involved in our new contemporary classes, and are Jason Walsh. If you ever want to see the impact that we have in Metro Schools, go to his newcomers class. There, if you know, in last count at Overton, there were about 92 languages spoken, and he has a classroom full of children who don't speak English at all. And not only that, they speak multiple languages, and he's learned to communicate with them through music as the universal language and put them together in an ensemble of this group. His classes have grown so much, they had to add a 4th percussion class at Overton this year because students are just getting in line to be in his classes. So we're really, really excited about what you just heard, and I thought it might give it an extra special meaning if you knew that those are not your typical band students who we just pulled out of a band class who've been learning music since 5th grade. So Music Makes Us is the branded name for music education in Metro Nashville Public Schools. And what that means is it's everything that involves music education. It is us, it is you, it is everybody in this room. And it became a result of a joint effort between Metro Public Schools, the music industry and community leaders, and our mayor and our Dr. Register. So Music Makes Us is not anything different. It's just the name for what we do in a new and creative, innovative way. And it's important to point that out because it's a public-private partnership to provide rich musical experiences for all 83,000 children in Metro schools. Our boots-on-the-ground mission is to strengthen the legacy programs of band, choir, and orchestra, but also to implement a contemporary track where students like you just saw, who may not have been involved in music since elementary school, or who moved in, as you know, we have a very transient population, and they may have come to us with no musical training. So we have implemented a contemporary program where we reflect our diverse musical landscape, and that being, some of our examples are mariachi, hip-hop, rock band, songwriting classes. What's Nashville without a songwriting class? Country bluegrass, the world percussion that you just saw. Those are some of the examples of what we're doing to hopefully connect with the children who might not be in the typical traditional programs of band, choir, and orchestra. You know these, I don't need to share these with you, but except for the fact that I don't think it's ever time misspent to revisit the impact of music and what it does for children. These are statistics for metropolitan Nashville Public Schools. These are not for another school district. This is here, and this is our study from last year. So students with more than 1 year of music in Nashville Public Schools are 52% more likely to graduate, and the critical part of that that's left off is the on-time part. 52% likely to graduate on time. 7% more likely to come to school each day. That translates to 11 days per year. 15% higher GPA, 16% higher ACT, 16% higher ACT math, 9% math, pardon me. So for specific ethnic breakdowns, you can go to our website at musicmakesus.org where you'll find the entire research report, and those are remarkable, and I'll admit sometimes startling even to me, about the impact of music. Last year in Metro schools, our participation rates are on the rise. 100% of our elementary music students are involved in music. 43% of middle school students, 27% of high school students. That translates to almost 50,000 students in Metro Public Schools in music classes. Our middle school increased from last year to 7,285 to over 10,000 last year. Our high school numbers are staying the same, but we think that that is because of some programs that were discontinued at the lower levels in the middle schools, and with the increased programs that you'll hear about in middle school, we anticipate that that number is going to rise. At least that's our hope. High school programs, middle school programs, we've reinstated band into all of our middle schools. Band is offered in all 33 now. 4 new choir programs were implemented last year, 4 more this year as a result of your decision to provide budget autonomy for our principals. Choir programs at Head, Antioch, John Early, DuPont Hadley were all a result of the budget autonomy, and principals have already started contacting me about creative ways to engage in next year. We've got a new internship program for aspiring teachers as a partnership with the Blair School of Music and Vanderbilt University at John Early. And again, principals are thinking creatively now that they have some flexibility based on the student populations in their building, and we're really excited that they're involving music in those decisions. Our growth model, what that means is now all of our teachers are evaluated, our visual and performing arts teachers, because of Dr. Register's vision. It took about 5 minutes to sell him on this, that visual and performing arts teachers should be evaluated based on what goes on in their classrooms and the musical growth of the students in their classrooms, not standardized test scores for children they may never see. So what that means is, if I cut to the a really important part, for portfolio scoring, look at what a level 5 teacher has to accomplish in order to receive a level 5. Now this is, they have to produce evidence that is reviewed by a peer in a blind review of 2 levels of student growth, metacognitive processes, knowledge and skills, risk-taking, imagination and voice, and a range of abilities with technique, problem solving, and ideation. You can imagine why the principals are pretty excited when they have a music teacher who receives a 5 on a portfolio, because they know that's going to impact learning and the culture in the entire school. Some of the things that we've achieved this year that we're especially proud of: this year, over 1,200 instruments were donated to Metro Nashville Public Schools by the Country Music Association. Country Music Association has donated over $7 million worth of instruments to Metro schools. That's groundbreaking. Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation recently provided a grant to 3 of our schools, and our VH1 partnership, we recently received a gift of 3 more piano labs. So we're really excited about these partnerships. Here for the visual learners, this in the interest of differentiated learning, is a visual map of what we're doing. It's on the back page of the progression report that's in front of you, but I just wanted to put it up there so that you would see it and might possibly reference it later. I have it. If you'd like to have it in an electronic form, we can certainly get that out to you. This year, over 1,600 Metro Nashville instruments were repaired in-house by our new repair shop. And we've also implemented internships for Metro Nashville public school students. And that's translated, I found out this past week, to 2 of our students are involving their internship in their senior capstone projects. And they've opted to repair musical instruments as part of their service project for their senior capstones. So we feel like this is a real exponential benefit that's grown out of this plan to have our own repair shop. I was just mostly interested in keeping the instruments maintained so that we could be good stewards and hopefully getting them disinfected and cleaned out every year so that they would be sanitary. And so these are just benefits that are just manifesting themselves wildly. So we're really excited. So it's working. We've been named one of the best communities in Nashville by for music education by the National Association for Music Merchants. The Pearl Cone Entertainment Magnet and its Relentless Entertainment Group with their student-run record label is the only one in the nation. At Hunters Lane High School, every student in the Hunters Lane Band was offered a scholarship last year. What happened was the director from Concordia College came up and watched the kids work and watched their collaboration, and he said, I want every one of you in my band program, and I have scholarship money for you if you want to come there. That is a huge deal, and the kids are still talking about it. If you want something to do that'll make you feel really happy, go to a Hunters Lane band rehearsal. He's one of our greatest teachers, and the kids are really responding. We had a great partnership with ASCAP. We did a songwriting partnership where we brought in 3 songwriters, professional songwriters, to do a songwriting unit at 3 of our schools, and they partnered and wrote collaboratively and wrote songs and then presented them all for each other. Our Little Kids Rock partnership has grown. We have 49 teachers now who are trained in Little Kids Rock, impacting 42 of our schools, I think was the last count, and so that's pretty exciting. Our Mariachi Band is improving daily, and they were recently invited to perform at the Recording Academy's 16th Annual Grammy Block Party. What we're looking forward to for this coming year, we're about to launch a new research study that's being funded by the Country Music Association and by the National Association of Music Merchants. We're going to build on our benchmark study, and we're going to assess the efficacy of our current programs and hopefully identify and minimize potential barriers for why all children might not be able to access a rich quality music education. 3 of our schools this year have been invited to perform for the Tennessee Music Education In-Service Conference to be held in April. That is a district first and certainly a state anomaly. So we're very, very proud of that. Smart music technology is being implemented in all of our middle schools. We put it in our high schools, you may remember, a couple of years ago. Now all the middle schools will be able to provide for better assessment of individual musical growth, so that we can work on differentiation for their learning and provide for their musical growth. And then we implemented our first MNPS district-wide indoor percussion program. 5 schools had students who participated, working collaboratively to prepare a program and perform in public and compete. We have a special needs project that's about to launch next week on Friday, where we'll have a special needs an in-service for our teachers who teach music, where they'll come and learn about adaptive instruments, on how we can provide rich musical experiences, and at the end of the day, the teachers will be able to request these special needs instruments for their classrooms based on the ones that they feel like will impact their children that they serve the most, in hopes of enriching that experience. And then we're also working with a private partnership to expand our student leadership programs so that we can provide rich opportunities in terms of student leaders, not just for music, but for life. We've just had so many things that have just gone so well this year, not the least of which, in terms of qualitative growth, 64% growth in the number of our ensembles that received superior ratings in their concert performance assessment from 14 to 23, and a growth of attendance of 30% from 30 to 39. So we just feel like we're doing some things really, really well. But what's important to state here is that this couldn't happen without the support of an administration that consists of visionaries and without the support of a school board that's willing to publicly state that we support music education in Music City. We know that you understand music is important in education because we foster collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. But you also recognize music as a means of transformation in urban education. So Nashville is the home of music education innovation, and it's also the home of urban school turnaround, and we're proud to be a part of that. Thank you so much for sharing your time tonight.
Your site, and then if you will share that presentation with Cameo, because I know there's some data in there that we really want to use as talking points as we move about the city and talk to individuals as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks again to the students for their participation here and the art students and their work. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll do it again. Okay, next we have governance issues and consent agenda. Ms. Kim?
Sure. Recommended approval of contract for New Goodlettsville Middle School, Hardaway Construction Corporation. B, recommended approval of supplement number 1 for Shane Elementary School additions, Goodwin Mills and Kaywood Incorporated. C, awarding of purchases and contracts. 1, 615 Screen Printing. 2, AZT Inc. 3, All-Star Screen Designs. 4, Advantage Screen Print. 5, Atomic Learning. 6, Bluegrass Uniform and Equipment. 7, Charon Sport Services Incorporated. 8, Compass Learning. 9, Convectus Solutions Incorporated. 10, Dell Marketing. 11, Express Press. 12, Francis Communication. 13, Night Owl Graphic and Design Inc. 14, OI Incorporated. 15, Paris Printing Company. 16, Personal Computer Systems. 17, Socrates. 18, SP Designs and MFG Inc. 19, Sunrise Promotions LLC. 20, The Bar Group, and 21, The Public Forum.
Okay, fine. Structure, Ms. Grove? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you so much. That was highly successful. The music helped, I'm telling you. Moving into reports. Director's reports, first one, district accountability data. What did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry, that should have come off. We didn't have any recommendations to come out of the Director's Evaluation Committee. I apologize. And reports.
We have 3 areas for reporting tonight, and I'll ask Dr. Changas to come forward for the first report, district accountability data. While Dr. Changas is on the way, I know that you received in your packets a great deal of information, school level information, which is information that you asked for. And we also have some additional information here that I think you'll find informative. Dr. Changas.
Thank you. My report will be short tonight, but I will be happy to answer any questions about the information that was shared earlier. And let me start by saying that what you're going to get tonight is just a visual presentation of some of the pieces of the voluminous data that I shared recently. The packets that you received have 3 years of achievement level data, demographics from the past year, but results by subject area from TCAP and end of course exams for reading, math, and science areas, all of our end of course tests and TCAP tests in those areas. I wanted you to have access to school level data that will be available on the state report card site in the very near future. There's also value-added information that's part of that packet going back for 3 years as well. The packet does break the data down by subject area, which is more detailed than we have in our academic performance framework that will be coming very soon. We roll up our framework across the subject areas of reading, math, and science and give a composite measure, but we wanted you to have the breakdown by subject. We are currently waiting on one piece of information from the state to finish up our framework, and that's projections from achievement test scores on the TCAP to the ACT. In other words, are students trending in the right direction in order to be at a 21 or higher on the ACT? And last year we got that information on September 19th, so it should be coming this week, and hopefully we'll have that completed next week. I'll add that there's one preliminary piece of data that we're using in our framework currently at the high school level. The graduation rates are not yet finalized, but they're very close. We have preliminary data, and it will be public before the next board meeting, so I'll be happy to share that at that time. I can't violate the embargo, but I can tell you we saw some positive trends with regard to the graduation rate, and we're using the school-by-school data to populate our framework currently. But what I'm going to share with you tonight, again, is just a visual presentation, and I thank Ms. Kim for some suggestions on the possibilities here. What we want, what you have in front of you is the first page is high school success rate increases. Success rates are proficiency across subjects on the end-of-course exams and all of the reading, math, and science areas. And what we're comparing is 2012, the first year that we had new standards in Algebra 2 and English 3, to where schools are 2 years later in 2014 across these areas. So these are one-year success rates over a change, though, over a 2-year period. And what you see is some pretty significant growth that's occurred in many of our high schools. And positively, all of our high schools have shown growth over that time. I'm not going to point out specific schools except for a few exceptions. I will point out Hume-Fogg has the lowest increase, but they're at 98.3% proficient, so there's very little room for them to grow. You see MNPS Middle College at 24.2. That's 24 percentage point increase in a 2-year period across multiple subjects. Hunter's Lane, 22 points. A number of schools in the 19 to 20 range, including Big Picture, Maplewood, Hillwood, and Stratford. So there's a lot of positive movement at the high school level. Typically, you know, we're pleased when we see increases of a few percentage points year after year, but these are obviously much more significant. The next page is middle school data, and this is TCAP achievement test data. And in this case, since we already had made a change in the standards in 2010, unlike the high school changes that occurred in 2012, I've gone back to the 2010 and 2011 success rate. In 2011, the state gave us a success rate for the first time as they were preparing to identify priority schools. So we're showing the growth over a 3-year period here across reading, math, and science on TCAP. Again, we have a wide range of distribution in terms of performance. You see a couple of our charter schools at the top of the list, KIPP Academy and New Vision Academy, scores that have increased about 40 percentage points over a period of time. You see Rose Park at 23 percentage points, Cameron at 22, Margaret Allen at 21. These are representing gains of at least 7 percentage points per year across multiple subjects. So while the state targets are typically looking for growth in the neighborhood of 5-6 percentage points is a target, this does show that is not only possible but can be exceeded significantly. At the elementary level, and I know this gets rather crowded, you have schools on the upper end that have made gains, well, Lockland at 23 percentage points, bringing them up to about 85% proficient in advanced currently. This is, again, is over a 3-year period. But Rosebank, not far behind at 17 points, Old Center, Dan Mills, Schwab, all in that 15-point range or higher. The 2014 data, we do see some schools with negative scores. We did take a hit in the 3rd grade, statewide and district-wide, in terms of reading, both in math and reading language arts, and that is an area that we are looking at. And I'll just add that, you know, I've mentioned when we've shared our our district accountability data that was provided by the state, that the trends statewide have flattened in terms of growth over the last couple of years. And that is the case, and we're looking at that with respect to our framework. Whether we modify the framework or not for this year, I don't know. Our results are very comparable to what we saw last year. But as we go forward with the framework and any evaluation of schools, we do think there's value, especially as we are about to change assessments in the very near future, to potentially use statewide data to kind of set a benchmark in terms of growth, looking at adjusting on an annual basis based on statewide averages. But given that we've had flat scores statewide and still see scores with schools with double-digit gains over the last few years, I think shows that even in this climate there is room for improvement. The next graph gets into value-added scores relative to achievement. And each of these dots represents a school. In your handout, I've identified just some of the schools, but you have all of the data that goes behind these scores on the pages that follow. What you have in terms of entering achievement is what we call a normal curve equivalent, or NCE score, with 50 being the state average. For the high schools, that's a current year state average. The growth index, 0, represents average growth statewide at the high school level. And these are units that are taking the scale score growth on a test and dividing by the standard error. Basically, anything that's 2 or greater would be 2 standard deviations or greater, which would be a 5 on the state's evaluation scale for schools. Anything below a -2 would be significantly below. Most of our school, this is Algebra 1 data, and so we have both middle schools and high schools here. High schools do have the disadvantage of losing some of their highest achieving students prior to those students entering. But one of the things you do see here is that even high achieving schools such as an MLK, Bellevue has high achieving algebra students, Rose Park, even those schools are able to make growth that's above the target. A lot of the criticism that and concern we've had over the years with value added is, can you make growth on the upper end of the scale? And there is room for growth. Now, there is a ceiling on that growth, but obviously there are schools that are doing extremely well. Schools whose achievement is not quite in that neighborhood, but are still making exceptional gains on Algebra 1 include some of our comprehensive high schools, McGavock, Antioch, and Cane Ridge, for instance. And this kind of data can be provided for any subject. We also have the opportunity to look at this type of data statewide and identify schools that are knocking it out of the park and might be models for other schools in our district with comparable demographics. The final graph I have is elementary and middle school math value added in relation to entering achievement. And what you see on this graph, again, is most of our schools are above that solid line, which represents average growth. But even some of our highest achieving schools, Meigs, MLK, Percy Priest on the far right, are exceeding the state target. Even though there's not as much room for growth, they're still getting positive growth. You see other schools with high achievement, Glendale, Harpeth Valley, Granbury, also above that line. Regardless of achievement, if you just look at in terms of the growth, you see a number of charter schools, including KIPP and Liberty College and STEM represented, but also McMurray, and McMurray has the second highest raw score in terms of growth. Head is up there, and a number of our middle schools. The growth is significant. What it takes for schools that are either in the priority range or on the cusp of priority is multiple years of sustained growth. Now, these are 3-year averages, though, when we're looking at these value-added scores. But we wanted to give you kind of a flavor of the results in a more visual presentation. As you can see, there is a wide range of school performance that we see in this data. It also means that there are possibilities for us to learn from the schools that are hitting those higher targets in terms of growth. One of the things we're working on with our framework, as I've mentioned in the past, is breaking that data down by demographics. We're going to be tying that into our diversity plan as well to look at the relationship with diversity, and particularly with regard to minority status and free reduced lunch, and look at those schools that are getting the highest growth. And the next step is to find out what they're doing that we can learn from in other schools. I'm going to turn it over to questions now about any of the data, either the visual part or the packet that you've received.
Hold on. Ms. Pierce?
This is the packet that we received on, we've been looking at page 2 and page 5.
Mm-hmm.
I was specifically looking at the benchmarks of the economically disadvantaged versus non-economically disadvantaged, being the gap being closed. And I was a little concerned that there's 2 ways to close a gap. Raising up the bottom.
You're looking at the district-wide packet from the retreat. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So it was just, it looked to me like that gap was closed primarily by the non-economically disadvantaged children dropping.
Well, it depends on the specific area. You're on page, for instance, 5, you mentioned?
Right,
Yeah.
2 and 5.
Yeah. And I will say that we're in the process. The state, when they identify schools in terms of gap closure, don't take into account, there are other places where they take into account where the subgroups have met the majority of their targets. In terms of our recognition of schools for closing the gap, it's a 2-stage process. We have to show the gap closure, but the subgroup has to be moving upward. If the comparison group is moving upward as well, that's fine, but what we don't want to do is, as you said, close the gap by the ceiling coming down on the comparison group. So for economically disadvantaged, we have data. I know there's a lot of information here, and if you look at the comparison groups, on page 5 we have the economically disadvantaged versus the non-economically disadvantaged, and we did lose some ground in 3rd grade reading and math in terms of the comparison group from the previous year. Of course, those were also, most of our students fall into the economically disadvantaged category. That is an area we have not received all of the statewide information, but there was a drop statewide as well in terms of the overall performance as well as non-economically disadvantaged. But yeah, that is a concern. We want to see all subgroups, including the comparison groups, moving upward.
Anything else?
With regard to that data, we did make improvements, in terms of graduation rate, in terms of Algebra 2 performance for students, and English 2 as well, in terms of the non-economically disadvantaged. But the K through 8 data is where we saw a decline.
So somebody is looking at that?
Yeah, we've been in the process and working with Leadership and Learning to recognize schools that have made significant growth and improvement. And one of the areas that I kind of put on hold was we wanted to recognize the achievement gap closure, but we didn't want to do it without taking this into account as well. So they have, again, it's a two-stage process. The schools that are raising achievement for all students as well as closing the gap. It's a double-edged sword when you have all subgroups moving upward. Sometimes the gap widens, but I'm less concerned. I would be less concerned personally about that than the other way around when we're bringing the upper achieving students down. Yeah, we are taking that into account.
Ms. Kim?
Yeah, you know what, Dr. Changas, can you walk me through the actual math on, for example, the MNPS high school success rate increase? I think I'm literally not following like what the equation is that we're using to get from 2012 to 2014 and how these numbers came to be.
Yeah, do you want to look at any specific tier, or does it matter?
I'm assuming you applied the same formula. If you just walk me through, I'm sure it must be obvious, I'm missing it, but what is the actual?
And for the high school math, I'll start with the middle school. In your packet, you have the packet that was sent do you have the packet that was sent late last week? If not, I can give you an extra copy.
Should be
the packet that was sent to the board.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you have that in front of you by chance?
Not right in front of me.
Let me give you a copy.
Oh, thank you.
And let me see if I've got it. Let me get one copy. The far right column in this data packet or the far right columns have the success rate. So when we're looking at the middle school data, you see the 5 columns to the right that say success rate. Mm-hmm. We're comparing the 2011 for middle schools and elementary, the 2011 two-year rate, which was provided by the State Department of Education to us. We're comparing that to the one-year rate for 2014. So we're looking at this year's results relative to where we were when the state set their initial baseline for priority school identification 3 years ago. So the difference between those numbers is what we're reporting here. So we're showing current performance across reading, math, and science. This is the average percent proficient or advanced across reading, math, and science. We're comparing 2014 to results 3 years ago.
Okay, so to get to the 2011 two-year rate, so for example, the first school on the list here, it says 44.9. Mm-hmm. That's an average?
That's an average.
Sorry, walk me through as though I have not, because I'm still not following the
It's the average percent proficient in reading, math, and science, which you actually can find the year by year.
Across 2 years. So 2010, 2011.
I'm sorry, yeah, we gave you the 3-year data for reading, math, and science. This would have been 2010 and 11 results combined, percent proficient and advanced.
Got it, straight average.
It's just a straight average. That's what the state uses to identify priority schools.
And 2014, then, the 3-year rate is just the average of 3 years?
It's the average of, yes, it's the average of 3 years for reading, math, and science.
Got it. So, sorry, I don't know why I'm struggling to follow this. So the high schools are...
And the high schools are, this is using several subjects. In that data packet, you have end-of-course scores that the success rate is on page 5, but I'm sorry, the high school data starts on page 6, page 7.
7.
And the actual breakdown by subject is on page 8. But the success rate for high schools would be the average percent proficient in advanced across English 1, 2, and 3, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Biology 1. So here we use 2012 as the benchmark because that was the first year of the Algebra 2 and the English 3 exam. But the state now provides a success rate across all of these subjects that they use for identifying schools. And so what we're basically saying is this is the growth that's occurred across subjects, the average growth that's occurred in terms of proficiency increase.
So then, to put it in very plain terms, to take the MNPS Middle College, which has 24.2 points of growth, then that's the equivalent of, should I interpret that as being 1 year, in 2012, there were 100 students who were proficient or advanced, and now in 2014, there are 124.
Correct. That would be the comparison, 24% increase.
Okay.
So about 12 percentage points a year.
So this is a 2-year average.
Over a 2-year period, they've gone up 24 points.
Thank you. All right.
2-year summative. Is that it?
Yeah. And so then the takeaway, sorry, this is maybe, and by the way, I love actually, I'm, as you know, a big fan of like very plain charts that visually have impact in terms of sharing the spread. So I applaud that. I think that some of this stuff though is like, if you have to think that hard about it, like we have to get that just right, I think, in order for it to be legible for me. But then also to just the average person out there who might be looking at this stuff, like how do you make sense of it? And I think the sense making part, I would love, like even if it's footnotes at the bottom of just like how he did the math and just in very plain terms, like, so this is what this means. It means 100 students and it's like, yeah, you have to dumb it down for people like me.
And what I would also add is we probably, and we wanted to keep this short and show some of the possibilities here, but I would probably break this down by subject because it complicates it further when we go across multiple subjects. But given that this is what the state has utilized for accountability, we decided to start here to show a overall performance across multiple subjects. But the value truly comes when we look at it subject by subject, and we can do the same type of thing by subject.
Okay.
But we get into a lot of data when we.
That's true.
Yeah.
But so if we look at the high schools, then the spread between, let's take out the top performer and the bottom as just anomalies.
Yeah.
Just for kicks. And so the spread then is an average 1.7% growth up to 21.8%, which is an enormous
Tremendous,
spread.
yeah.
Which actually gives me tons of hope about what's possible, that we have a school, huge comprehensive high school, that had an increase of 21.8%. It gives us something to anchor on and something to then aim for. And then on middle schools, is there a reason why all of them aren't listed, by the way? Because they're not all listed here.
This should have all of the schools that have been in existence since 2011.
Oh, okay.
Because
so,
we're going back to this first success rate that the state
okay.
provides.
So then the same thing. So let's take out the top performer and the bottom is complete anomalies. They're unicorns. And so even within that, the spread is negative 0.2, all the way up to 37.2%.
35.
Yeah, it's huge.
37.2 points of growth. Which, yes, it's exactly. It's like a 35-point spread across schools.
Yeah, which I think tells us that while steady progress is good, we can think beyond just incremental growth. It is possible to make significant gains.
Which is amazing, because we want to anchor on what's possible. So then for elementary schools then, the takeaway, I mean, the spread is fascinating here because it is. Well, I guess it's not. I guess points-wise, it's actually pretty similar to middle schools. It's just that we had more schools regress.
Yeah.
Still 20.
So that's interesting unto itself, and I know that's not worth probably a whole discussion of just why is that.
Because it's middle school.
we got a theory over here, Dr. Gentry. So if we take out the bottom and the top as anomalies, then we're still talking about negative 10.8 all the way up to 16.8.
And when we discuss the elementaries, again, I'll point out 2014, in reading and math statewide, there was about a 4 percentage point decline on average in those subjects. So the state took a hit last year. Now, we've got some schools that took a bigger hit than that, but that's one of the issues in terms of comparison data that concerned us a little bit in terms of the assessment. But the bottom line is, even in that climate, we have a lot of schools that are showing double-digit growth.
Still almost 10 points here, 22 points.
So say it out. Yeah, what did you say?
So it's 10 points from top to bottom, roughly 9.8, and then 22 points from top to bottom. I mean, from just in the ones that have increased.
Yeah.
So what's forthcoming is the new academic performance framework, and I know Paul and his staff have been working on that, and I think that'll be a very visual presentation of what you're seeing here and more complete data. Paul, I believe you're within a week or before the next meeting being ready with that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Graduation rates, the last data to go on there, is that correct?
The graduation rate and the projections to the ACT. If we do not get the projections this week as we expect to, we think we have a workaround from the projections that are just looking 1 year ahead on TCAP. There's a very high correlation with the ACT. But the bottom line is we'll have something by the end of next week, and we will get that to board members soon. That will be more of a composite across areas. I will say our framework is more heavily weighted toward growth than the achievement side, but there's still a significant portion that is achievement related. It also has a small school culture piece, which is growing a bit with the addition of a parent survey this year. But we are looking forward to getting that wrapped up into you soon.
So that's very timely that you mentioned that, because in one of our committee meetings, I can't remember which one it came up, and was really around the academic performance framework. And so this data, and I think Dr. Changus alluded to it, we first saw this in our retreat. So the retreat was just a little different. But one of the things that we did spend a good bit of time on was looking at data like this. And so, I think the next thing that pops into my mind is, how do we begin to leverage success that obviously exists within our district? We talk a lot about professional development and, organizations, and we reach outside of our district and we sometimes create our own. But, can I go to one of the schools that's in that upper range and find those teachers that are killing it in reading and killing it in math with our third graders and have them host sessions and teaching strategies and share their teaching methodologies and how they're working with students that, some people may have written off as incapable for various demographic and what we now know insignificant to the concept of success, or the concept of what's possible under the umbrella of success. How do we begin to leverage what we're seeing and start to use our data to actually move the ball, which is why we, over the past 5 years have been regaled with presentations about how robust our data warehouse is. The next question, not just with presentations like this, but even the academic performance framework, the question we have as a board is, now what? So we really need to, and we're interested, and we're looking to put together a work session around the academic performance framework. So don't plan on a short presentation on that one, to really get us to the now what. Okay, so once we framed it, we've put a spotlight on performance, where it is happening, where it isn't happening, where we're seeing growth, where we're not seeing achievement, and things of that nature. We want to help support the what's next.
Yeah. Well, we'll be happy to share that data soon and work with leadership and learning on the next steps, including showcasing those teachers and those schools that are having success.
Sure. Okay. Every time I reach for this thing, it winks at me. Hold on. Ms. Froke.
I just also would like to say, when I look at these numbers, we're talking just about achievement scores. Something I think we need to take into account is the impact of socioeconomics on the achievement scores. So when we look at schools that are doing very well, in comparison to other schools, it'd be interesting to see how demographics may have changed those schools, because I suspect that some of them that haven't changed very much in other areas, that are becoming, more gentrified. I suspect that some of the increases we see are based on a different student population. So I think if we're going to compare schools, we could get down sort of demographics as well.
Yeah, now we know there's a relationship between one-time measures of achievement and a pretty high correlation between those measures and free reduced lunch. That's part of the reason our framework is more heavily focused on the growth pieces. But you're right that when demographics change over time, that is a compounding factor. One of the things that we have been looking at, if you noticed in the graphs that showed the value-added scores versus achievement, it was looking at entering achievement. That's the achievement level of students prior to this year in terms of where they come in. And that's one of the things we want to include, take a look at in our framework, is if we have consistency in the incoming classes year after year. If not, if there has been a significant change in the demographics in the population in any given year, there probably needs to be some consideration of that. But our framework, we've never claimed that it's not correlated. We know there's a small correlation with free reduced lunch. It would be much higher if we focus more on one-time achievement measures than growth. But that is something we all have a challenge to deal with.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Changas. Anything else?
Yes. The second item, thanks, Paul. Second item on the director's report's priority schools update. This is a very quick report, and I'll ask Cameo to hand out a document. After the presentation I made, the comments I made at the last board meeting, we've had quite a bit of community question raised, a lot of interest from the community raised, particularly in the East Nashville area, about the approach that we're considering there. I think the important news is, an important update for you, is we've got 30, and I've actually got, I think, 4 others scheduled that are not on this list, a series of community meetings. We have 13 priority schools in the district now, and I'm scheduling a visit to each of those 13 schools, a faculty meeting with each of the faculties to discuss their growth, their change with the faculties, opportunities for turning around or improving those schools, and then having a parent meeting in each of those 13 schools with the parent community. We also have a number of other meetings scheduled with interested community organizations. The community PTO leadership met, and I met with a group of parents this morning. And I want to say that those meetings have been very constructive, a very good conversation about some of the challenges that we face. And over the course of the next month, by November 1st, actually it runs till November 5th, we'll conclude all of these meetings and begin pulling together those ideas in form of a proposal for you for a plan going forward. I think our goal is to have a plan somewhere around January 1st with action to be taken over the course of this year and next year, perhaps as late as the fall of 2016 for implementation of some of the more complex areas. But I feel very good about these meetings and look forward to concluding these over the course of the next month as we go forward. See if you have any questions about this.
You have a question? Anybody? You do? Okay. Hold on. Ms. Kim?
I appreciate the update, Dr. Register. It's less a question and more, well, maybe it's a question. You have East Nashville's full attention. From, was that 2 weeks ago? was it 2 weeks
Yes,
ago?
Yes.
Seems a lot longer than that. So you got our attention.
It does.
So I wanted to, yeah, and like you, and I appreciate the effort to get out there and talk to small groups and then focus on the priority schools in particular. I too have been out there talking to a whole lot of people, some of the folks reflected on this list and then many others. And I'm hearing a whole mix of different things. It's from, real, a sense of hope about what, even though there's no plan, it's more like what it represents. Like this idea that we could aim high for our kids, that we expect more, that we could unlock a lot of potential through a number of changes. So I hear that. And then I also hear a great deal of anxiety. People who feel a little bit disenfranchised and feel like their voice is not being appropriately heard. And then some, and all kinds of different things sort of in between on that. It's like less about like casting any kind of judgment. It's just, I wonder how this is all going to play out, So it's been incredible, like the diversity of perspective. I'm sure you're hearing that too, or I suspect you are through these meetings. And as I've been pondering all of this, and it's been intense. I mean, incredibly intense. I'm sitting right there, I live in the heart of East Nashville. I'm hearing from a lot of different folks with a wide variety of perspective. And even for me, and I get to sit at this table and I get to hear you speak and, share the announcement firsthand and then to, talk with my fellow board members and hear from other folks about what they're thinking and whatnot. Like, even I can lose my way. It's just like the anxiety, I can feel the anxiety sort of rising up. I mean, I see the potential, but then I also see the anxiety rising up in front of me because I don't have like a clear path, to like something. And so I've found it like incredibly helpful to just re-anchor on like some of the things that some East Nashvillians anyway are saying to me, which is just this notion that we could create a world, in East Nashville, a broader district that really does afford every single child in the community an excellent education. I mean, the kind that really puts them on a completely different path in life. And I just keep going back to that idea. Like I don't know all the details. I don't know how it's all going to play out. There's so much that needs to get worked out. But I see that vision. Like I can see it, like what's possible out there. And even seeing this data, it's like, holy smokes. Like some of what, like specific individual schools of all stripes, traditional magnet charter, which was amazing. It's like you see them all represented in that top echelon of what's possible in just 1 year. And I feel like it's been, anyway, I just wanted to like, through all the anxiety and the back and forth and the noise, it's like helpful, I think, for us to just sort of reroute in what's possible, even though we don't know the full like pathway there. And then, but then also, there's lots of differing opinions, obviously. And so I was just thinking about, and I'm not totally convinced that every single voice is at the table. Because our schools, like the Maplewood and Stratford clusters that are represented here, are incredibly diverse. It's 75% kids of color, socioeconomically diverse, and we want to make sure that totality of all those perspectives are represented, as we move forward and as we give input. And so I'm thinking of that. That's also floating in my head about how do we actually draw in those voices. But I also have lots of hope about what we could do, because right now I'm sensing like little rents in the fabric, that could become big holes, but they don't need to be. Like they can actually all come back together, because I do think whether you're Asian American or African American or white or Latino, like there are certain things that we all want for our kids. Like I think about like the daughter I don't have, but if I was lucky enough, to have a daughter, I would have big visions for what would be true of our kids and for my daughter specifically, which is that no matter what school she might pick in East Nashville, she would find that she is loved. She walks into that school, she gets hugs, and that like every teacher greets her with like complete unshakable belief in her ability to do whatever she wants in life. So in those moments when she's not great, and she's being a little quirky and odd, just like I was as a kid, like even in that moment, like everyone can see the greatness, and that's all they see, and that's all they're trying to bring out.
And that when she grows up, if she's asked by that CEO of her company to run the focus groups, to coalesce the numbers and the data, and she's asked, like, what does the R squared mean on that? Like, does it show correlation or not? Not only does she know exactly what's going on, she could actually do it all, because she has the words, the numbers, the knowledge to hang in a knowledge-based economy that obviously privileges, right, people who are well educated. And I feel like that's the part that East Nashville wants. I think regardless of the ethnic background, the socioeconomic background, I think that all of Nashville wants is like that kind of school for their kid. And they could pick from a bunch of different schools that offer that love, the support, all kinds of enrichment, like, and the celebration of what's possible for each child. And so I think like there's so much possible. It's like all I can think of, like in the swirl of like, and there's been some negative and there's been some, you know, angst, and I understand it, that we could still though, right, bring the totality of all that's great about East Nashville together. And I'm hoping that you would be willing to then launch an advisory committee that represents the full diversity of thought and opinion and on my beautiful community of East Nashville as we progress, so that as you're, you know, testing out different ideas and putting forth different concepts, and lots of people are coming to you as represented in this sheet and this full list of community meetings, that you're also then, like, we're proactively like seeking that input that represents that diversity.
I absolutely agree. I think that is the direction that we need to take. We've actually talked about that some this morning in the group that I met with, and with other groups I've met with. And I think making sure that we get that full community voice to the table is really important. And we're working on some plans. We're not ready to announce them yet, but I know the board's asked for us to give a monthly update, and we'll do that. But we're working on some plans to really have a professional organization help us in gathering and collecting that community voice to make sure that all voices are heard. And I think you can tell by the number of meetings that we've scheduled, my attempt is certainly to do that, is to gather a lot of that. And as I told the group this morning, if you ask for a session with me, and as I said to the group this morning, I said to the group not yesterday, but one morning last week, I'll come back again, call again. Let's do an update in 6 weeks or so before we start finalizing a plan. And I think I certainly agree with you. And one thing I want to say, and I know we've got some people from the East Nashville community here tonight. I see your shirts back there. But one thing I want to say is I think we've got more flexibility and more opportunities in East Nashville because we're not fighting such overcrowding and such big numbers as we are in some other communities where we don't have the flexibility to change things around that we actually do in East Nashville. And I've been really impressed by the first part of genuine community engagement in that area. So task force is an idea that I think we certainly ought to consider. So that's really what I wanted to bring you an update on.
Hold on, we have one.
We'll keep you, yes.
We have one more, Mr. Pinkston.
So, my bias is communications. Earlier this month, we updated board policy EE3, which governs the treatment of parents, students, and citizens. The specific update that we made was endeavoring to, and I'm quoting from the revised policy, provide direct written notice to parents, students, and citizens, informing them about decisions that will affect them, including but not limited to a number of circumstances. So the reason I'm asking the question is I heard the Bailey meeting on September 18th was well attended, but that perhaps there weren't many Bailey parents there. There were a lot of community members, but not as many parents as there could have been, which makes me think, what are we really doing to get into the household with communications? And if we're saying, we value direct notice to parents, students about decisions that are informing them, what's the plan? I mean, are we going to be putting letters in backpacks to go home to let parents know specifically what's going on and what's under consideration? Provide them the opportunity to provide feedback by email, by online collection tool for those who are working parents who are working 2 jobs or more. And then the corollary question, one of the schools that's on the priority list now is Whitsett Elementary in my district. That school, as you know, is 2/3 Hispanic or Latino students. So what are we doing to create a special set of communications conditions to speak to those parents in Spanish and give everybody, enough lead time to where they can really get engaged and not get caught flat-footed at the last minute?
Right. Well, in the first place, the Bailey meeting was first, and it was the quickest one that was scheduled, and that was done at the request of the principal there. We felt we had better participation there than we have in the past at Bailey. We want the engagement of a professional organization to help us with communications is really important, and part of that involves engagement on social media and other means of really organizing parental input, and we'll continue to monitor that and look at that as we go forward. So a number of strategies will be developed over the course of these meetings and the next meetings, and we'll monitor community input to see how that's going. I will say, in contrast, that in the past the parent meetings I've had at Bailey have been very poorly attended, so it was a good increase this year. In terms of WITSET or schools that are heavily impacted by non-English language parents, we do notify in writing in 5 languages now when we notify. WITSET's got a big Latino population, Hispanic population, and we'll have translators available in conversations with parents at that meeting to help with communications.
With the issue of direct written notice before solicit input before administrative decisions made?
Yeah, Joe Bass in our communications department can speak more specifically to engagement. Joe, would you address that, please?
Yes, hello. Bailey did send letters home in backpacks. They also did a call out to all families. That's something we're probably going to do at every school. As we've said, every school is unique and it's going to require unique solutions, and that includes communication. So we've been working with the principals on how best to attract the parents. For instance, at Kirkpatrick, Dr. Nelson told us that since most of the parents walk to pick up their children at the end of the day at 3:45, the best time for meeting would actually be 4 o'clock. And so we scheduled that meeting for earlier and did the faculty meeting later, and Dr. Nelson is helping us with outreach there, and we're working with principals on an individual basis for the best ways to reach parents. And the point of bilingual communication is an excellent one, and we will be working on that.
Can you share some samples, whenever you get time, of the communications that have gone out?
Sure.
So we can understand if it's...
I can send you a copy of the letter that Bailey sent home, and it's a letter that we've asked all the principals to send home as well, and it can be translated very easily.
Thanks.
To Will's point and to Elisa's point, there are some, some of the populations there are, have multiple jobs or, are we doing anything around transportation? Because sometimes that can be a real issue.
Transportation for the meetings?
Right.
No, we haven't for the immediate meetings, but that is something we can look at for the future ones.
Well, and I'm not sure that it's, demanded, but just in offering it might be something, that some parents would take advantage of.
Yeah, in speaking to the principals, I'll be sure to ask that question if transportation would help.
Thank you.
And if there's any solutions we can find.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question for Dr. Register. Will the school that will be taken over by ASD and will the school that will be a conversion school for KIP, will those be announced in January as well, or will?
We have been in conversation with Chris Barbick at the Achievement School District, and I don't think he's feeling a real pressure on that, and the longer we go, the more we can negotiate that. I would expect those decisions to be made by January or before January. Of course, the KIP conversion's one that is more in our control than the Achievement School District takeover, and Randy Dowell we're in communication with him now. We have not gotten into real specifics. Honestly, what we're doing is looking at the low-performing schools and the ones where we feel a complete change like that could make an effect, and where we might not be able, with the efforts that we're doing on turnaround, might not be able to make the change that could be done with a complete conversion. And we want to make sure, I think one of the things that we've got to be very deliberate about is personalizing any change, tailor-making any change that's made school by school to what works for that school. What problems are we having there? What's the data show? What are the causes that we see? What are we hearing? What are we hearing from faculty? What challenges does the school face in the community? And then developing a strategy for that school. There is not one cookie cutter model. And the point of looking at these schools individually is to come up with a more aggressive plan. I think we've got to be more aggressive. What we've done so far hasn't worked. And if our goal is really in 3 years not to have any priority schools, and I think Ms. Kim was very, your vision is what we're really after here. What we're really after is no priority schools. And so the plan has to be developed for each school. We're in conversation with KIP. We'll make a recommendation to them. We'll make an offer to them. We're in conversation with the Achievement School District about what they may choose to take over, understanding that they have the authority to make that decision. We want to influence their decision-making authority there, and we feel like the conversations are constructive. No surprises there. We'll keep you posted as we go along. I think over the next month to 2 months, those two decisions will probably be made, because it's important to let parents know what's going on in advance and to have time for transition.
All right.
I want to give kudos to the parents that have shown up here tonight, and I've watched this since the beginning, and I have been really impressed with the dialogue that's going on over in East Nashville. I mean, they understand the issues much better than I did when I ran for school board, and so I think that if we listen and collaborate with them, I think what comes out of this discussion will be a much better outcome for everybody over there. I've just been impressed with.
Yeah, absolutely agree. From as late as this morning with a meeting I had this morning, got some really good ideas out of the meeting this morning, and I think when we compile all these and put them together, and the parental voice is very important as we make big decisions. But let's also recognize the fact that we cannot continue to maintain an approach that allows us to have schools that are performing in the bottom 1% in the state. It's not an option not to deal with change. We have to change the correct way to get the results that we want. No children deserve being in a school that's in the lowest 5% in the state.
I agree, and I don't know that it's necessarily they're afraid of change, but it seems to me that it's a desire to have change be very effective, I think. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from their conversations. But I agree.
Madam Chair, the next item on my agenda is English learners, and I'll ask Dr. Critchlow and Dr. Kevin Stacy to come up to the mic. 5 slides.
Almost,
but I don't know how much verbiage goes
when
with
you heard
that.
the ding, that was my flash drive, and and let me. There may not be any slide. Oh, here we go. Scared me for a minute when I heard that.
Good evening. My name is Dottie Critchlow, and I'm the Executive Officer for Instructional Support. And Kevin Stacy is here. He is our Executive Director for the Office of EL Learners. Also, we have Molly Stovall, our Director for EL Services, and 2 teachers that have come here. So Kevin's going to share his information with you, and as you view it, you may have some questions, and we've got some experts here. We have Jenna Hagan from Thomas Edison and Ashley Overbay from Glencliff Elementary, and they'll be here to really respond to your questions with some depth. So Kevin?
Okay, thank you. Also, there are translators here as well from my office that came to support, so I want to thank you for coming out. So Madam Chair, respected board members and guests, I want to thank you for this opportunity to share with you about the English Learner Program for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Ms. Kim, you actually summed up very well the vision of our office and what you said that all families want in Metro Nashville Public Schools. And I want to take time because this is what drives our office. The vision of the MNPS EL team is to support English learners, non-English language background families and schools in providing the social, emotional, cultural, and I want to stop there for just a second because that's the heart. And if we do not win the heart of our students, the next two is not going to happen, which is the linguistic and academic skills necessary to excel in higher education, work, and life. And that's opportunity for all, no matter their linguistic background, no matter if they came here with no English at all, we want that for every student in Metro Nashville Public Schools. So that's the vision of our office. There we go, perfect. Here's the data to look at. Here's your native languages in the district. Spanish leads the way with 15,460. That's approximately 600 more than last year. Arabic drops down considerably, but with a large number as well, with 3,027. Our non-English language background, that's any student coming into the district with another language besides English. Whether they pass proficiency on the entrance language test or not, that's 23,525, 27.6% of MNPS. Our district is very diverse. English learners, when students' families come in, they fill out a home language survey, and again, if they have another language besides English, they need to take a language entrance test. Those that did not pass proficiency is 11,575. That's 13.5% of our district. And then limited English proficient, let me explain this. This is our subgroup in accountability for TCAP and EOC. This subgroup represents those that are eligible for EL services, and when they exit the language test in the spring, 2 years of that transitional time. So that's 2 years of those students plus the EL. That represents 15.5% of our district, 13,246. Let me give you a context of where we are in our district for its grade levels. 68% of our ELs are in elementary, 18.5% in middle school, 13.5% in high school. That gives you a context of where we are. We have approximately, we're getting close to 1,000 more ELs than we did last year in the beginning, starting off. So our population is growing. Challenges. Our challenges that we are having, new standards this year. We had old standards, they were called the ELDA standards. We're moving to standards that are more aligned to Common Core. That's a challenge. Many of our EL certified teachers do not have experience in the classroom with ELs. So they are certified, but they are brand new to teaching. Another thing that we are looking at too is EL teacher retention. A lot of professional development going with our teachers, but making sure that they are remaining in the EL work field and also in our schools. Our city is one of the anchor cities for immigrants and refugees. We have a growing diverse city and school system, and along with that comes the linguistic, the civic, and the economic needs of our families in our city. And along with that, and I still want to highlight this, is we also, as a system, MNPS system and city, need to be socially, emotionally, and culturally aware of their needs in working with our families to make sure that they are achieving. There's a very important Supreme Court case called Castaneda versus Picard. And one of the things that it says is that you have to have a sound approach. It must be reasonable in implementation, and the outcomes say that it is working. The outcomes last year and were not working. We were not achieving as much as we would like to achieve. We had to reevaluate our approach, and we had to go forward with our approach. After 2 weeks of being the interim in November as the executive director, I presented a plan to Dr. Register and the executive leads of the following. Schools and the EL office must share the responsibility of our EL families and our EL students. That they must choose an appropriate model for their school, but they must ensure that each child gets an hour of daily service if they are EL and they are pre-production, means they are new to the English language, or beginning, which is a stage above. We must allow more time for students who are new to the English language, a sheltered time for intense scaffolding and content and language by allowing classes for these learners. Also allow the ELD time, the English language development time, and the reading language arts time to be combined to make sure that their education is meaningful and that they are also getting that structured language time that's so necessary for their language growth. If providing an inclusive approach, plan effectively to make sure that those are with similar proficiency can be grouped together to make sure that group instruction is taking place. Professional development, what we've been doing in the district, we have trained 450 EL teachers in the new standards this summer and fall alone. We've offered sessions for principals to make sure that they understand EL standards and practices. We're networking with Belmont and making sure that we can collaborate in professional development with our EL teachers. We're networking with Vanderbilt in certification for our EL teachers. Strong collaboration with our literacy director, Tammy Lipsey, which is in the back, and working with how do we make sure that we're providing the appropriate professional development for our ELs, our English learners, at the pre-production, which is new to English language, and beginning stages. We are also providing leadership in the school building by giving trainer the trainers for new standards and high leverage EL standards and strategies for our teachers so that they can be the experts in the building. We're addressing response to instruction and intervention by addressing also what do we do with English learners during this time and making sure that their linguistic needs are taken care of as well as their cognitive needs are taken care of. That's the bottom-up approach. That's with the ELD teacher. Now we need to look, what do we do with our ELs outside of the ELD time? Well, number one is that we have lots of organizations in this city that have a mindset for English learners. I've established a quarterly meeting with those organizations to make sure that we are not reinventing the wheel, that we're trying to work together so that our needs and updates can be coherent and be efficient. We've been very proactive in the community. I was invited to speak at the Kurdish Educational Conference in Salahuddin in the spring and was invited again this summer at their educational conference this past summer at Tennessee State University. I've spoken at St. Michael's and St. George Egyptian Church, which was very interesting, and the service topic was ELs and Common Core. I've been on the radio station, on 2 Spanish radio stations, and once on K-Pasa, all since the spring. We're also working very strongly to make sure that our refugee and immigrant support services with Nashville Alignment are meaningful. The committee was kind of at a standstill. Nashville Alignment and I agreed to reestablish the committee with leads of refugee and immigrant organizations, along with the mayor's office. The response was enthusiastic, and we are looking to begin that this October. School professional development beyond the EL teacher, there is an implementation plan for every school with over 20% EL. We provide monthly PDs in 31 schools to all grade level teams, and I only have 13 in my staff to do that. We provide flexibility professional development model based on the school needs. It's not a cookie cutter program. And we are also working with a committee, social emotional learning for ELs, to provide a multicultural guide for teachers in the next coming school year in regards to social emotional learning of our learners. Our meeting we have established with a Kurdish community group in October to begin asking questions like, what does it mean when you have a group of students that are male and you have a female teacher? Let's talk about that. And that's an example question. So the response to these challenges, I'm very excited to say that we have improved this year in all of our accountability areas. We have a lot more farther to go in regards to this, but we are going in the right direction. As of yesterday, the estimated calculations can be taken away. These are accurate. According to Jan Lanier, who is our coordinator, that we have increased from 62.1% in language growth to 66.5%. These changes took place in January, and our test is around February and March. So some of the immediate changes were 3%, almost over 3% growth.
Can you tell them what that means?
Language growth is any progress in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So the state target is 69%, and that's the expectation. So we were at 62% the year before. And so we made changes, and our changes took to practice, and in that short of time, we feel very happy with that growth. Again, we have more to go. And the target for 19% in 2012 and 13, we had 16.5% of proficiency. That's how many students exited on the language proficiency test. This year, 19.3, 7/10 of making that target. And then our achievement, we did not make our achievement in all of those accountability areas. However, Jan Lanier told me yesterday, if it had been just grades 3 through 8, math and reading language arts, we would have met it. So we have made considerable growth and achievement gains among our ELs. And looking at upcoming professional development, one of the things that we must ensure is that our ELs across all levels of language proficiency can fully engage with rigorous grade level English language arts content and mathematical standards in Common Core and college readiness. And that we also must ensure that ELs are developing their English and closing the academic language gap as well.
So Kevin's...
I want to talk one more slide. Sorry,
okay.
I forgot this.
No, that's okay.
Because this is huge.
Yeah.
If you can see this chart right here basically says that our former ELs, after exiting the EL program, are doing very well in comparative to the other groups. That's reading and language arts, and then I'll flip to the mathematics, and you can see that our former ELs are achieving, in comparative to the other groups, they're actually ahead of the pack.
So we'd like to invite you to consider this and ask us questions. I'm going to ask Molly and Jenna and Ashley to come up and join us. So if you have questions for them, they can respond to you.
We asked some teachers to come because I thought you might want to have a teacher perspective as well.
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, thank you, Kevin, for this presentation. One question is there an average amount of time that kids spend in EL services, the hour a day in elementary? Is there like, are they a year, a couple of years? I know it would depend on the child, but what's the average?
For the service that we give is they have to have a minimum of an hour of daily service if they are pre-production and beginning. If they're intermediate, then we begin to look at the child and see where they are and do they have self-advocating skills necessary to obtain language, and then we want to introduce them to the rigor of the classroom. And looking at that, research says 5 to 7 years to become fluent in academic language. And that's if you have 5 to 7 optimal educational years. So if we're looking about 4 years approximately for a student to exit. But when they're exiting on our test, they really have the skills. I wouldn't say they're necessarily fluent, but they have high functioning skills in order to obtain the academic language and also to self-advocate in the classroom, self-manage in the classroom for themselves, to ask questions from the teacher, and then begin to delve into that content.
And over the course of those 4 years, they are still taking achievement tests every year.
Absolutely.
Even though they are not proficient in the language.
As soon as they arrive in the country, they're taking all the achievement tests except English language arts. They're exempt 1 year in that.
So even though they know no English and they've been here one day,
Exactly.
they have to take tests.
They arrive the day before the math achievement test, they're in there.
Is that a district?
That's
That's a
state.
That they,
Trust me, that was district. If that were district.
I think one thing that's really important is, I take issue with the fact that we don't get credit for those children who've exited the program, because they grow into proficiency and we see that they perform very well and they're actually moving at a very rapid pace. But once they exit the service, once they exit the program, then we don't get credit for their performance going forward. I think that's a concern.
And to respond to that as well, the slide that I just pulled back up, the top of that shows the proficiency and the advanced rates for 2013 and 2014. And you can see that our English language learners have continued to grow academically as well.
And also I want to address, because a large percentage of our students are refugee and immigrant students coming in, or refugee students coming in. And just right now in the world today, Turkey just closed its border after 100,000 refugees fled into Turkey, and Jordan right now has 20% refugees, and then we are getting a lot of refugees. And of course, we're going to get a lot from this situation, from ISIS, of course, and I expect that. But looking at that traumatic experience, a lot of our students have that experience that they have to overcome as well. They've seen things that we will never ever see. They have experienced and heard things and heard cries that our students, other students will never see. So not only are they looking at the academic gains and achievement, that's where that social, emotional, that caring and that learning and understanding that child is very important. And we've got to understand, and we are committed from our office in providing that professional development as well.
Ms. Shepherd?
Thank you very much for this great report. I do have several questions. I apologize up front. I've forgotten the definition for former EL.
That's a student who has gone throughout, so they have been in EL, and at the end they have passed the language proficiency test, and then they have gone through 2 years of transitional time. That's that transitional time when we're looking to make sure if they're succeeding or not. If they're not, we put them back in EL. Okay. And then after that 2-year time, that's former EL.
Okay, great. So I'm curious as to why on the data chart that you presented, the non-English language background, you said as any student coming to the district with another language. Even though they might be proficient in English, they're still defined under this category, correct?
They're still defined as non-English language backgrounds.
Because some students get 2 languages really well, and the younger the student, the better.
So this is basically, and this is, I'll go back from years in the past, and I've been in part of the EL since 1993, working with English language. A long time ago, and thank God we've moved past this, that the student would come to the secretary and the secretary would say, can you, hello, how are you? And the secretary would say, oh, he speaks English, he needs to go to the regular class. And then this one couldn't maybe speak as well, and so this one would be in EL. And the government and the federal government and things began to crack down and said, look, we have got to really focus on how can we make this non-discriminatory to families. And so if you have on the home language survey, every student in this district fills out a home language survey, which is required by the state. And then if they put another language other than English, then they must be tested by a language proficiency test. If they qualify for services, that means they did not pass that test. They're EL. If they pass the test, then they are non-English language background.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, I get that. So another question. On the percentage of ELs per grade level, I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to hear it verbalized. 68% in K through 4, and the reason for that is that, that is so much significantly higher than the other grade levels.
Well, they're exiting out, comparative to when they get to middle school. A lot of our EL students have exited out of the EL program in regards to that.
Gotcha. Okay. And so one last question, and then I'm done. So when you talked about the 1 hour of daily services for these students, what exactly does that look like?
Get those people back.
Molly, come up here.
Yeah.
It looks different at different tiers, but at elementary school, the EL students are going to an EL teacher. They may be switching classes for reading, or they have a teacher that does push in or pull out. And in some cases, they stay in the integrated classroom where they're really focusing on language skills in a small group. But during that hour of time, the teacher's focusing on reading, writing, listening, and speaking, looking at grade level standards, and helping to scaffold to make sure that the student has the language to be successful with the grade level content.
That's the answer I wanted to hear. Thank you. And then I'm done.
All right. Mr. Pinkston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all for the data and the presentation. It's useful, very helpful, and I've personally been hungry for this information and what's still to come. I'm excited about what's possible with this. I think unlike the challenges that we have, the board have been trying to grasp what are the 12 different improvement plans, for high schools. In theory, if we can innovate around this area in a way that's scalable and reaches an entire critical subpopulation, then if we can somehow crack the code in this, it just feels like all boats rise in the system. So I just want to lob in a couple of observations, comments, and a couple of requests, and I'll be brief. A few things I'd like to have continual dialogue around as the board member who represents, along with Dr. Brannon and Ms. Hunter, the clusters that have the greatest challenges and opportunities in these areas. Number one, we need to know going forward, what are your needs? Is it, do we need an increase in EL certified teachers going forward? Do we need to consider extended school days for English learners? Do we need smaller school sizes and smaller classroom sizes for high percentage EL schools? Do we need an increase in the number of interpreters, increased initiatives around parental engagement, all of the above, I suspect. And then where I'm going with that is then let's talk about what the budget implications are. I'm a big fan of the kind of do more, with existing resources, but I also want to be realistic. I know that this is not going to be solved at the level that we all desire for it to happen without putting some additional resources in it. So let's talk about what that looks like going forward with the plan, the report that the board has asked for, and think about along the way how we can build really broad-based buy-in for what we need from the council, the next mayor, and others in the community. I think having a campaign of sorts around this issue, I think this community is ready for that conversation, and I, for one, would love to participate. I think another issue to watch is diversity. I know that we've got diversity challenges across the teaching corps, but particularly in this area, having opportunities for young new Americans to interact with teachers who look like them and who can relate to them at a very basic level, I think is important as we go forward. And then also state policies came up. As we know, 15% plus or minus of our system are English learners. Statewide, the average is less than 5%. I think there's a tremendous opportunity that we've got to better educate state policymakers, if they'll take the education, which they may not, around the unique challenges and opportunities we've got here. And I think that's part of the education campaign that I was mentioning earlier. And then the last thing, almost the last thing, I'd love to know, after you get time to look around the field and do some due diligence, who's doing this better than anybody else in America? What can we learn from them? How soon can we go see it in action? And then let's think about identifying every able-bodied, engaged community leader in this town who can help us get to where we need to be. And let's take them with us so that everybody's on the same page when it comes time to make the ask. So those are my thoughts. I'm really, really excited about seeing this work as it unfolds. Communications is important. Please keep us in the loop as you increase your community engagement. We are on the front lines, volunteering in churches, mosques, community organizations. We hear a lot of comment, a lot of good, some not so, but us being equipped with the most up-to-date information will help us help you all do your job. So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We appreciate your support. Thank you.
So what I'll tell you is slide 5 is always the ask, okay? Going forward, that's for everybody's presentation. It has to be the ask. So when we talk about we talked about this at the retreat, the 5 slides, we want to know what are you charged to do, where have you been successful, you've done a great job. The challenges, and it's really boiled it down to where we need to hone in on. But of the three things, by definition, that we're responsible for, one of them is budget. And, you know, not to say that we're going to go out and find 500 people for you tomorrow, but it helps inform the process for the board chair and the board as a whole to start to have those conversations. And I use the example, and I'll go back to priority schools for just a second, and I've had conversations with a few people to say that if we get this right, with the passion that Elisa Kim was exuding over here, I thought she was going to cry. It would make me almost cry. Don't cry. Please don't cry on TV. Because then I'll have cry on TV. That if we can get that right, we have an opportunity to create a model that if you put priority schools in the center and you expand those concentric circles, and we talk about, you know, from what it looks like inside of a school, what community support around a school looks like, we can create and replicate that. And in part of the conversation, I said, you know, and I'm going to go ahead and say this on television, that when we got ready to build the Skirmahorn in this city and those who decided we needed to have a Skirmahorn, they got on planes, private jets, and however they managed to do it, and flew all over the world to find the best of breed in opera houses, and that's how we got a Skirmahorn. And I think we can do the same thing, get all those people. I would think that we can get as much passion around education as we can around a Skirmahorn, and get them on planes and put us on planes. I don't know what I'm looking at, but put people on planes to find the best of breed and replicate that here in this city. But we don't know if you don't ask. So help us help our district and our students by clearly articulating what the needs are. You are the experts. You know better than we are. We do what it takes to put a quality educator, a quality school leader in an environment where a significant portion of that population is EL students. Okay? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good job.
Next, you, Dr. Register.
Yes. I have a report that I'll hand out. This is a request that you made at the retreat, and it's a breakdown of the mobility rates for 2 years by school. I don't think it needs any explanation. It's very clear. It's a breakdown by school for the number of enrollment, number of students, exits, and entrees during the course of the school year. And you've got it for 2 years.
All right, thank you.
And then I have one other statement I'd like to make to the rest of the board and to the general public. Dr. Gentry and I have had discussions about the fact that my contract ends June 30th of 2015. I know that we will work together for a good transition and leadership going forward. I'm focused on moving critical issues forward in the district this year, including growing the Model Pre-K initiative, developing plans and engaging the community, and eliminating priority schools, transition to new standards and aligned assessments, and recruiting high-performing teachers and leaders to the district. These issues cannot be put on hold during a transition, and I am committed to continuing to move these issues forward as long as I'm here. I do want to say that I will not seek an extension to my present contract, but look forward to working with Dr. Gentry and you as board members to guarantee a good transition and ongoing progress in the district. So thank you. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we're going to committee reports. Governance.
We held a governance committee meeting immediately prior to this meeting, at which we discussed GP7 committees and appointments, and we have voted through changes to that. It's notable in that policy that we have made some changes to our committee structure. So here are the changes that we've made. We have merged budget and finance with capital needs to create a new committee called Budget and Capital Needs. We have removed advocacy as a separate committee, and we expect that our representative for class, which is the Coalition of Large School Systems, will continue advocacy work on behalf of the board. We have moved ethics and naming of schools to ad hoc status. They will meet as necessary. And we have formed a new committee called the Community Engagement Committee, which is a committee of the whole. And the purpose of that committee is to meaningfully engage the community in decision-making processes that are intentional and systematic and strengthen collaboration with school district stakeholders. The committee is comprised of board members as well as school district staff members from the Office of Student Services. And then finally, we have scheduled our next Policy Governance Committee meeting on October 27th at 11:30, and it will be held in the back board conference room. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Froke. Director Zeval, Ms. Kim?
Sure. We also convened this committee right before this particular board meeting. We continued to revise BDR 5, which speaks to evaluating monitoring director performance, and then we also reviewed and gave feedback on the actual evaluation tool, which is a revision of last year's. That's where we are.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. I don't like these buttons. I'll go into my reports. So we'll talk about the committee appointments. I'm just going to go over the major committees. I hope that there is some inward appreciation for the collapsing and reduction in the number of committees that we have. But just we'll give you the chairs of those committees, and we actually have vice chairs to go along with that. For budget, capital needs, Anna Shepard will chair. Will Pinkston will serve as vice chair. Community engagement, Will Pinkston will chair. Mary Pierce will serve as vice chair. Director's eval will retain Elisa Kim as chair. Governance, still Amy Froge chairing there. Teaching and learning, Jill Spearing will continue to chair with Joanne Brannon as vice chair. I do want to just take a moment to say something about teaching and learning. We've sort of clarified the role for that committee to just primarily serve as initial review of policies related to curriculum assessment, evaluation, promotion, retention, and graduation, and refer that to the governance committee for final review and approval, and then oversight for major district initiatives, district strategies that are affecting academics. So I'm sure that committee will be pretty busy as we start to flesh out the priority schools plan and move forward in that space. So I want to thank each of the board members for chairing. We have additional several other, obviously, administrative committees and other appointments, and we will make sure that the central office staff gets a copy of this. One of the things you will also see is a schedule of those meetings throughout the remainder of the year, and we will be, for some of these committees, reaching into the central office staff and asking for your regular participation so that our deliberation is informed and not just a lot of pontificating, which we're good at because we were elected. Just some comments around the board retreat. I think it was great. I had a great time. I learned a lot about my fellow board members, some things I'm sworn to secrecy and I cannot share. However, the one thing I think that came out of it, and I'll say a little bit more in a minute about that, is as much as I talked about the diversity that sits at this table and how we're positioned and poised because of that to be great, we're really not all that different. You know, as we shared and got to know one another better, we found that we have a lot more in common than we have as differences. And so I'm looking forward to a really, really good year. If anyone else wants to add more comments, we're good? Okay, very good. You ready? Who's ready? Okay, just hold up. Not until it's a surprise, so you have to wait until my cue before it comes up, okay? All right? Because you'll get distracted. They'll get distracted if you do it before then. All right. So just to wrap up, I promise this is not going to be a regular occurrence, but sometimes things happen, and most of the time it's Elisa's fault, and this one's Elisa's fault. So my closing thoughts for my report today. Today is the first day of autumn. I'm sure most of you already know that. And this happens to be my favorite time of the year. In addition to changing temperatures, although in Nashville that's only indicative of a change in the week, there's the changing of the colors of the leaves, right? The shades of red and yellow and purple and brown are unmistakable, highly visible indications that something is different. But basic science teaches us that it is an internal change, a chemical change that causes the physical changes that we see. So it made me think, how do we get there? as a district, as a board? How do we create the internal shift that results in something that the students and the teachers and the parents and school leaders and staff here at the central office and within our schools, our community partners and other stakeholders can actually see? So from my position here as a member of this board, I started to think through how do we proactively participate in making that change happen. So you may have noticed that we're wearing jeans today. Some of us got the whole memo and put on their white shirts. However, this is just one of those visible signs that we are here to work. We're here to work with you. But what's the change that has to happen internally for that change to manifest itself into something tangible, something real for our students? So I came across an article that articulated the 8 characteristics of an effective school board. And they are as follows. Effective school boards commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement and quality instruction and define clear goals toward that vision. Effective school boards have strong shared beliefs and values about what is possible for students and their ability to learn, and of the system and its ability to teach all children at high levels. These effective school boards are accountability driven, spending less time on operational issues, I mean, it's in here 3 times, spending less time on operational issues, and more time focused on policies to drive student achievement. Effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff and the community, and establish a strong communications structure to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district goals, hence our community engagement newly formed committee. Effective school boards are data savvy. They embrace and monitor data, even when the information is negative, and use it to drive continuous improvement. So you'll see more transparency in this space. Effective school boards align and sustain resources, such as professional development, to meet district goals. They lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles, with strong collaboration and mutual trust. And effective school boards take part in team development and training, sometimes with their superintendents and sometimes without, as we did with our retreat, to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments for their improvement efforts. In short, it's time to change the conversation. Not just a topic, but how it's informed, how it's conducted, and what we expect the outcomes to be. It's going to be hard, but then that's the definition of change. I often speak fondly of my primary education experience. I can name every teacher I had from kindergarten to 6th grade. I could pick them out of a lineup to this very day. All right, you ready? Okay. One of my most impactful experiences came via an exchange with my kindergarten teacher, Miss Hewlett. Now, I don't know her first name. I don't think I ever did. That was indicative of the student-teacher relationship of that time. It wasn't one of familiarity, but one of respect. We just didn't know each other like that. I even called my mom, I really did, and asked her, and she didn't even remember that lady's first name. But I recall sitting in a classroom at my neighborhood school, Daniel Elementary. And there's an asterisk here that I have to share, and this comes from the History of New Orleans, which is where I'm from. And it says that in addition to the schools erected by the city, mention should be made that one of those which owe their existence to the generosity of private parties. Among these may be mentioned the 2 Daniel schools, one for whites and one for colored, erected respectively in 1907 and 1914 at a cost of $45,951 for the white school and $25,494 for the colored school. That was my elementary school. But I recall sitting in that classroom waiting with others to be escorted to my 1st grade class. So as it seemed we'd be there for a while, I took out my brand new writing tablet and my big fat beginner's pencil. Remember those pencils? That was pre-sharpened, and I began to write my ABCs. With intense focus, I wrote the uppercase letters and paired it with the lowercase letter. I made sure to stay within those defined lines and the boundaries. I made sure there was adequate space between the pairings. And when I was done, that was me. I looked down, double and triple checked that all was as it should be, and I was smiled. With pride, I scooted back my chair, picked up that tablet, and marched to the desk where Miss Hewlett, my kindergarten teacher, sat, and presented it to her with my smile that highlighted the space where my 2 front teeth used to be. My kindergarten teacher looked at the tablet, and then she looked back at that girl, and she said, "That's nice, but you're in 1st grade now, and you've got to do 1st grade work." I was crushed. I was actually I cried. I literally cried. Over the years, I have reflected often on that moment, and I came to realize that in her own way, Ms. Hewlett was telling me that it was time to change the conversation, time to elevate my efforts and my expectations for what I was capable of accomplishing, that the outcomes of last year were not enough to meet the challenges of this year. So I say to you, my fellow board members and central office staff, that it's autumn, and welcome to 1st grade. Thank you. Ms. Frobe?
Very nice. Very nice.